All right, let me set this up here. The rope to hang myself by. So
That's racist.
let's start this out. And I introduced this topic to you guys earlier, so maybe you'll probably avoid this trap, or maybe not. Maybe we'll just have a conversation. What do you think about whitewashing? Remember a couple years back where there was a lot of controversies about movies that were Asian, or I think it was mostly Asian movies, where they would take the main character, they would live action the story, but they would put a white person in. The one that comes to mind is Avatar. I know there was one with Scarlett Johansson.
What about The Wall?
What do you guys think about
whatever
that?
That was like Matt Damon.
Oh, The Wall, yeah. I think those were whatever. I don't know. I didn't see it, so I can't comment.
So yeah, I guess I can go first on this. I mean, so I can speak the far left position, which is not entirely where I'm at, although I'm pretty close with the far left position, is that, you should have real people that are, when it's coming down to race and ethnicity, we should definitely have those individuals portraying races and ethnicity correctly inside of movies, right? So we should have, obviously at this point, I think we all hopefully can agree if we're meant to be having, like, I don't know, if you're making a movie about slavery, you're not gonna have a bunch of white people painting their faces to be slaves, right? I agree that's pretty bad. Yeah. Where it also carries over for me is like, when this next live action Avatar: The Last Airbender comes out on Netflix, they better have a majority of Asian cast, because the TV show is meant to be taking place with individuals of Asian descent. That is something explicit.
Right, and Inuit and whatever it is, whatever the Fire Nation is.
Hollywood is very, very, very much, well, the Fire Nation is also Asian. I mean, it's just they're Japanese.
Yeah, you're right.
Water tribe is Inuit. But no, when we have what's it called? And obviously the air tribe is nomadic, earth tribe, all that good stuff. So when we look at actors, are Hollywood is overwhelmed with white actors, but it's not that there aren't not white actors. It's just that only white actors have been historically cast, and so that's been problematic when we look at history. So I think it's really, really important to make sure that we aren't wrongfully casting people. I think the further left will take a few steps further on that. They will say things like, we want to make sure that people that, if we have an LGBTQ actor, that individual is represented by an LGBTQ person, and we have a disabled character, then that person should be, represented by a disabled person. I would go as far to disagree with that sometimes, not all the time. I think there's merit, but also I want to say this too. Having come from the theater world, I do think it's really cool and really important for people to be able to express, like, the different dynamics that go into acting, that go into theater, that go into it's an art, right? So there's definitely cases where every single time a foster kid's portrayed in a movie, I don't expect that actor or actress to have grown up in child welfare. I do expect that research, right? Yeah, I mean, I would love to see more actors and actresses that grew up in child welfare be famous, because there's very few of them. But with that said, I do expect actors and actresses to research, to make sure they know about it, the life of that. That's the point of an actor. It's almost like you research first, and then you're portraying that. You do the due diligence to be able to say, okay, I as an artist can take this character and represent them in art. And I think that is something really beautiful and powerful. And I don't want to take away from that, but yeah, I mean, long story short, I don't think we should have white actors portraying Asians or Indians and whatnot. We should actually take the effort that if we're going to have someone that's Native American or First Nations or Indigenous, preferred word, that we have someone from that community portraying those characters. We shouldn't have Tom Cruise, painting his face to be an Indian. That's kind of insane.
Okay, so then real quick before I go to Tim to get his take, are you okay with Robert Downey Jr. painting his face black in Tropic Thunder?
That was meant to be satirical, to make fun of other people who were there. So yeah, right. No, I mean,
you're a good person. You're not a crazy person. Okay, Tim. I mean, some of these controversies, especially the whitewashing, sort of predates your, I would say, probably your political awareness. So I don't know. Were you aware of this being a problem? Have you heard about any of these stories?
Yeah, I've heard about it, and my general take is that I don't really care. Like either way, like I don't. Okay, what I don't want is that there's let's say there's a predominantly white group that controls all the movies, and they're being racist specifically in saying, hey, we're not going to work with black actors, we're not going to work with what minorities, whatever, right? That's not okay to me. What I do find to be interesting, though, is that that people want to treat this different than other things in the world, which is you have a right to not go watch the movie, and if you think that it's wrong that somebody is casting a white character into an Asian role and not an Asian person, then don't go watch the movie, right? Like, I think that if the population really gave a crap about it, then that would happen more. So I think, my approach is more from a neutral stance. Like, yeah, I don't want to see any sort of discrimination, but I also don't want to see somebody force anything on what is supposed to be in art form, right? Movies and video and all that's supposed to be an art. It's supposed to be some sort of a representation of whoever those people's are views and everything like that. So I also don't want to see minorities forced into, like I would hate it if it was like, oh, well, that person has to be an Asian. You have to cast an Asian or a black or a white or whatever, right? Because, like with Batman, like let's say for Batman in the comics is white. And if they casted a black Batman, I think that's fine. Like if they wanted to take it a different way and cast a black Batman, that's great. Go ahead and do it. You shouldn't say, well, he's white in the comics, so you have to cast a white character, right? Like, and if people liked it, they'd go watch it. They'd be like, hey, cool, black Batman, awesome. Now you really can't see him, whatever, because his suit's black too, right? But like,
so let me take that then. So I'll take that and pivot. So keep everything that you just said and get ready to use it against me in a couple minutes, because I'm about to contradict even some of the arguments that I was forming in my head when Chris was talking. And it's so funny because I love doing this.
Did you see Chris? I took it too far with my joke and he freaked out. He lost it.
Oh my God.
No, I missed it. Sorry.
I was just being a butt.
That was good. That was funny. Well placed.
I'm gonna have to rewatch my own podcast. Our own podcast. Anyways, all right. So let me hang myself here. Stop interrupting me. I'm gonna end my whole career right here. All right. So one of the arguments I was forming in my head when Chris, you were talking about it, I was like, well, I don't care who plays the role as long as they're the best person for the role. That is generally my stance, and that will continue to be my stance despite the arguments that I'm about to make, right? So keep all of that in mind, all the good stuff you guys just said, as I transition into saying that
So you're just playing devil's advocate here?
I'm trying to articulate a feeling that I and many people on the right have. Some of it will be devil's advocate-y, and the degree to which I hold this view will be, it's not like a strongly held view, but this is just something that I wanted to try to articulate and see what you guys think. So I am mildly annoyed at the massive push for diverse casting in Hollywood. And what I mean by that is that there are movies, I don't care if it's appropriate for the movie, right? So if, obviously, cast race appropriate, right? So if it's supposed to be a black guy, make it a black guy. If it's supposed to be a white guy, Asian, whatever it is, cast the appropriate race. Fine, great. I'm okay with that. What I've been seeing recently is that, like, if you take a look at all of the Netflix productions, and one of my favorite genres is fantasy, right? And so I'm looking at all these new productions, and you have this medieval, supposed to be European fantasy world. And now, like you were just talking about whitewashing, or we were talking about whitewashing, it seems like everything now is color washed, and that's not a term. Maybe I'll invent that, whatever. It's like you're just they are injecting just massive amounts of like every minority under the sun into these medieval European, supposed to be like castle type settings, and it's like. And I know I'm going long here, but it's like this mildly bothers me because it's aesthetically jarring, but it also bothers me because I know the people behind it are the super woke people that I detest, right? So it's like I was only mildly annoyed before, and it really wasn't worth talking about. It's like, fine, like whatever. It's just kind of weird. But it's like one of those things. It's like it grates because it's like I know it's progressives pushing this, and I really hate their ideology. So it's annoying to me more, and I'm really just trying to enjoy this. So I'll stop there. I have a couple different like points that I want to talk about on this, but like, how does that sound? Am I racist? What's going on?
Well, first, can you give us an example of a TV show that you feel like has?
Yeah, The Witcher. They're coming up with the Wheel of Time series. There's
Well,
let me just show you actually.
They're fantasy series. So who's they can't have.
I mean, The Witcher has like dragons and goblins, and I mean to say that universe is predominantly white. I don't know.
Listen, guys, I understand that, but like it is generally understood that those are white people, right? So like for example, let me show you.
I don't know. I haven't read the books, but do the books specifically
the
state
author
that?
is Polish. It is generally understood that he's writing it to be like a medieval Poland scene.
Again, I haven't read the books, and if you have, and you're saying, "Hey, all these characters are white, and they just made them other things," then I'll take that as a good example of what you're saying. But if it's just, I think because he's a Polish writer that he means everyone is white, I don't know that I agree with that.
This is like it's one of these things. It's like generally understood. Like so, these authors would specifically.
I've played all the Witcher games, and I watched the series, and I generally don't know that or understand it. So it's maybe generally understood by hardcore fans that have read the books. I don't know.
No. Okay, so look, hold on, Chris. Before you go, I just want to point out this is my weakest argument. This is just like I just want to talk about this. I want you guys to, I want to see what you guys think about that line of reasoning. It's my weakest argument. Honestly, I have better stuff to talk about. This one I'm willing to let go of. Like I really like I said, I don't actually care that much. It's just like annoying because I know it's being pushed by an ideology that I don't like. But go ahead, Chris.
So like if we were watching Lord of the Rings, if we're casting for Lord of the Rings, and they're like, you know what?
That's not a good example because they were actually.
This will be a good example. You didn't let me finish.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're casting for Lord of the Rings, and we're casting hobbits, and we're like, hey, you know what? We're gonna make one of them Andre the Giant. Yeah. Okay. That's retarded. Like, we need to we need to make it make sense for the story. And so I think in that case, to your point, like if it breaks your immersion, if it makes the story just not make any sense,
we'll get to that. I'm not talking about that yet. I'm not talking about that yet. I'm just talking about the general color washing of stories that we generally know to be it's like medieval European fantasy. Most of these or all of these people are white, generally speaking, in the text. Like it's never explicitly stated, but it's European fantasy. So I see your consternation, Chris. I understand. So let me just. I'm going to show you one example. So this is one of my favorite series. It's the Wheel of Time. I pulled up like just Wheel of Time illustrations. So it's going to be very hard for you guys to see, but here's 3 of the characters on the left here. White. Once again, don't really care whether they are. I don't mind if there's black people in my stories. Genuinely, I don't. And we'll get to that later too, because I'll talk about that. But again, white. These are official illustrations that I'm pointing out here. White. Right. So everybody in here is illustrated to be white. They're understood to be white. And this is who they're casting. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people right here are supposed to be from the same isolated medieval village. Does that make any sense?
It's fine. Some of them go to tanning beds. It's fine.
Yeah.
But I think like I don't see the problem with it. I mean to me,
look, there's no moral problem with. Okay, all right. So, go ahead, Chris, and then I'll make my next point.
Sure. Here's what I'll say. I just needed that one moment of just to grab my thoughts together.
Yep.
So if this next Black Panther movie comes out, and there's like a whole squad of like Japanese people living in Wakanda. That wouldn't work, right? It defeats Wakanda. So I get it, right? That's like where we had like a bunch of like, lumberjack rednecks from North Carolina, like residing in Wakanda.
Unless there's an interesting backstory, that's not going to work, right?
Right. So, and I'll say this too. There has been moments that, I'll watch a TV show where it's actually, I think it became and I am a social justice warrior. I want to be very clear on that. Although like I walk the walk, so I'm not like, a keyboard warrior. I'm actually doing things. And I think that's like something I get frustrated with on the left is like, all right, you guys can post things on Facebook as much as you want, but you're not donating. you're not. I'm going to get a side tangent right now. People aren't donating. People aren't volunteering. People aren't, actually contributing to the causes. They're not getting on their Democrat or Republican town committees. They're just like chilling on Facebook, and I got 300 likes, and it's like, no, that doesn't work, right? I have no respect for that. So if you are that social justice warrior, go volunteer somewhere. But anyways, I'll say this: when I'm watching,
don't do it. Watch Jordan Peterson videos. Just stay home.
Go infiltrate the system. Turn the system on the outside in. Anyways, when we're looking at, there's certain shows. Like I remember watching like Arrow. And Arrow, like late seasons of Arrow and Flash, got so over emphatically social justice. I was like, all right, I'm definitely not watching a superhero show anymore. I'm definitely watching like a soap opera on social justice. And I'm not against watching
CW though.
I want to say I'm not against watching something like that. Like it's not like that's out of my peripheral, but it's like not what I was expecting to watch. And I think it took away from the art a little bit. And so I believe when it takes away from the art, if we're trying to really force themes, I think there's better ways to do it. Wonder Woman did a great job of balancing, social justice and the art. I would say the Avengers have done a really great job of that, especially in Endgame. Each one has had a really great Spider-Man, Far From Home. When you have the Daily Bugle coming up, like totally shitting on Alex Jones with like, this is the greatest hero ever, and they're looking at Mysterio. It's like, okay, I love social commentary. I think social commentary can't take away from the art. And so that, to me, doesn't have anything to do with race or ethnicity. I hope that we have diverse castings across shows, as long as it makes sense.
Then let me make so you're segueing into my next point. So let me make that point, and we might find some agreement there.
So before you switch, like, what do you think about Jimmy Olsen being black in Supergirl?
I didn't see Supergirl.
So the Supergirl series, Jimmy Olsen, the photographer, which is from obviously the Superman comic books, he's cast as a black man in Supergirl.
I'm all for it.
I have very little, almost zero problem with that. Again, the only problem with that is that like I don't have a problem at all with his casting. The only thing that might annoy me, had I noticed that, like if I was familiar with that, I just would have thought of the social justice warrior behind the recruiting counter, and it would have annoyed me. That's it. Like that is all that would have annoyed me. Like I do not care that he's a black man. Anyways, so like Chris, you were saying, so it can't take away from the art. That is actually my next point. So the point that I've made so far is probably the weakest point. I was just trying to articulate that conservatives, we feel Hollywood, we know Hollywood is just chock full of like bleeding liberals, and we just see it in all of the new productions where it's just like they're just cramming as many black and brown people onto the screen as possible, even where it doesn't make sense.
They've never been hired before.
But I'm not. Again, I'm always, if it's the person that fits the job, they should be hired. It doesn't matter what race they are. If they're the best person for the role, hire them. Do not. I'm not for racial quotas, so that 100%.
Question for you, and I know you're not that religious, but how do you feel about Jesus constantly being portrayed? You're
Me?
not religious, yeah. As far as I remember.
No, I'm not.
How do you feel about Jesus being portrayed as a white man in a lot of Christian mythos, whereas he's obviously Middle Eastern?
I don't have a feeling about it. I just, like, whenever I think, since I'm not involved with the religion, I have no emotional attachment to that. But like, so there's a couple of things. So
it's kind of on par with this discussion, though.
Right. It is. But that one's just an interesting conversation to me, because every culture who has a Christian element, they all portray Jesus in their race. So there's an Asian Jesus, there's an Indian Jesus, there's a white Jesus, whatever it is. So every race does it.
Shapeshifter. I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, no, I know. Like, again, no emotional attachment because I'm not Christian, but everybody likes to see a God in their image, obviously.
Yeah.
It's obviously incorrect to say that he was anything other than, a sort of a brown guy from, Judea. So I think.
Yeah, Jesus is definitely a shapeshifter, Tim. You got it down.
Yeah. Well, he flies too. He does a whole bunch of weird things. He's magic.
I'll never forget. On this note, there's this one like Christian film that like portrays Jesus made in like Britain, and it's just like Jesus, blue eyes, blonde,
yeah,
descending from the heaven. I'm just like, all right, this this is wrong. This is all wrong. No, but on that point, I think it's like a really good comment. It's we definitely whitewashed Jesus big time. Like he's.
Oh, yeah.
I'll never forget. I want to do a quick story. I'll never forget. I was a senior in high school, and there was this dude who was like definitely, without a doubt. I remember I came across his Facebook recently as like Trump everything now. Like Trump, I'm sure he has like Trump tattooed on his butt. Like I remember telling him,
get mine lasered off.
What was that? Oh yeah, no, he's gonna get a second one now. He'll be things. But no, I remember telling him like Jesus wasn't white. It was like a dumb high school conversation.
Yeah.
And like he started getting really angry. I'm like, no, like he really was white. Like I mean, you look in the Bible, it actually says in the Bible, he has like feet of brass. Like last time I looked, brass isn't white. And he heated, like his face turned red. He started yelling. He's like, Jesus was white. And it's like, oh my God, dude. Like, sorry for rocking the world.
Yeah, spoiler alert, everybody. Jesus was a Jew. It's very. It took me a long time to know that. I mean, honestly, like I just hadn't thought about it. It's not. I was not like that guy because I was religious in high school. When I found out, it was kind of like, oh, never thought about that. You're right. Weird. Like I've just always seen white paintings of him. But hey, I guess you're right.
Yeah, because Christianity got spread mostly from Europe. They, went into Europe and then spread
the Roman
heavily
Empire.
from there. Exactly.
Yeah. But okay. All right. So, all right. Let me get back onto this because I want to let you guys get to your spicy content too, so we can all walk out of this knowing we'll get fired tomorrow. So this point that you'll probably agree with, so that you like this is also kind of proof that an indication that I'm not the bigot that a lot of people might think I am, with even bringing this conversation up. Here's a point. Why don't we just do race correctly? Right, so let's get past okay, fine, it's a medieval fantasy. Just about everybody should be white except for some of the cultures that are specifically described as it. Let's put that aside. Fine, let's put diversity onto the map, right? A lot of these maps are large enough where you can put diversity. They're not even doing that right? So the point that I brought up, so again, this picture right here, this is the cast. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people are from the same village that has been isolated for thousands of years. And you have, it looks like a mixed race guy, probably black and white. Indian, not sure what she is, probably just black. And then it looks like an Iranian or something like that, like a Middle Eastern guy. Why? Like, there's like 10 nations on this map. I'm sorry,
I
it's
thought
small.
they were all Hispanic.
No, they're not. I know. I'm sorry. It's real small. So I had to describe it for you. But
I kept saying that, and I was like, so they picked the whole Hispanic group instead of a whole white group. So what?
Sorry, I could have done better. But like,
except that guy, he's obviously Asian. The one guy,
right? That guy, yeah. So here's my point. There's a whole bunch, like there's a whole map in this particular story. Like, and I'm just going off this one to make a point. There's a huge map. In there, everybody's like, generally it's like European culture, so you can make all of those people white. Then there's a Far Eastern country. Oh, you could, like, there's people for that. You can make them Middle Eastern so that we can visually understand.
Where's the damn redhead? We are not being represented.
There is actually, so this guy right here is actually supposed to have red hair, and he probably will in the books. The guy in the far left. Let me just finish this point up. There's like a culture from across the ocean. You could have made those Asian people. My point is that like, I don't care about the diversity. Just do it right. Like they just crammed because these are the main characters, right? So they had to do it like diversity. They had to pay the stars and they had to make sure that it was like one from every race. That's a social justice warrior way of doing it. You're taking away from the immersion. You're not doing it right. And there's a good way to do it. Like there's going to be main characters that come from these other places, and you could have just like.
I mean, I'm looking at their names, and I'm not seeing. Like it's
one's named Joshua. He's probably Russian. Looks like Russian.
Yeah,
Marcus Rutherford. Yeah, they don't look. I mean, they don't look very. I suppose ethnically, traditionally ethnic names. But yeah, I'm telling you, they like. She looks Indian. She looks black. Middle Eastern. Again, I don't care if there's diversity in the show. Just do it right. Game of Thrones did it right. And I just want to bring that up, and then I'll let you guys talk about it. So Game of Thrones did it right? They had a whole bunch of different nations. It looked normal. There wasn't like you weren't getting like sucked out of it every couple minutes because there was, like it's just like a random black guy in this white kingdom. They had like the guys from the South looked vaguely Middle Eastern, the guys from the North looked vaguely white, like whatever. Like there's a good way to do it, and you still have representation. So that's my gripe. I don't know. What do you guys think?
My stance is still about the same. Like, if you don't like it, don't go watch it. If it's going to break your immersion, don't watch it. I think that it's great that people are changing things up. I mean, if you look at to go back to my Jimmy Olsen example, Superman was written back in the 50s, 60s. I don't know when it started, but when that comic started. But
wasn't it a World War II thing? Like he punched Hitler, or was that Captain America?
That was Captain America, but when it was written was still during a more racial time in this country, when there was still a lot more of that divide, and so reimagining some of these stories that were written back then, they're still good stories. They still have some good tropes to them, and things, but reimagining them a little bit, I think, is okay. But I think for the person who is the purist, who says, hey, no, this is the story, and this person, was whatever he was or whatever she was in the story, and they're 5 foot tall. You can't cast somebody that's more than 5 foot tall. Like, that's ridiculous. Whatever. Like, however far you want to take it. That's up to you. Don't watch it. But let people do what they want to do.
Well, I think, too, part of it, though, is that to come back a little bit, I totally agree, right?
Is it me or
like the true comic book nerds know that.
Say that again.
There were many.
You broke up there.
Did you lose? Yeah.
Oh jeez.
I noticed. What? I saw it. That is
the scene that he stopped on there.
I know. Look at you making them kissing lips.
I'm just going to try and do it.
All right. Maybe this will work.
It flashed you right before it did it. You could probably pop it back up.
My Wi-Fi is a little funny, but no, the true comic book purists would have realized that, there was many Captain America, there were many Spider-Man, there were many Superman gets murdered by Doomsday, and then you have other Superman take over his mantle that were American and whatnot. Like true comic book purists know the stories that realize no, there's actually much diversity, and so it's just kind of crazy.
Right. So let me just make my point that remember when we were talking early on, so we'll try to loop it back, and then you guys can hold some of that against me and I can hold some of that against you. So, I mean, you had a justifiable, let's say, annoyance, right? This is not like a moral issue. You had a it actually seems like a moral issue to the left as far as casting diversity, but you have an issue with whitewashing, right? And I think justifiably so in an artistic sense. It's just this character is Asian, why are you changing it? Right? And you got justifiably annoyed when directors were changing that. And so, do you not, and I understand that you have a sort of a quota mindset, or a reparations mindset, or a trying to get an equal outcome. I understand that's your philosophy, but do you not see the contradiction between saying don't whitewash and don't color wash?
No, I totally do. Yeah. What you gave as an example with it and that show you have coming out, totally it makes sense to me, right? Peaky Blinders. Peaky Blinders wouldn't make sense. It takes place in northern, southern Ireland.
Right. Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense if you casted Tom Shelby as an Indian, right? Or as someone from South America. It just wouldn't have made sense, right? You can't. It just doesn't function on those levels. And I would say it doesn't function on the inverse either, right? It's let's get races correct. I think the true root here, I think we're almost at the wrong question. We're asking, how do we correctly portray certain races, certain ethnicities? And that is, I think we're all in the agreement that's let's do it right. Or at least, Game of Thrones is kind of the gold standard. Let's do that. Why don't we just, I think one of the biggest issues, and we're finally breaking this barrier, is we just haven't had cultural representation truly portrayed in movies until the past 10, 15, 20 years. 10 years, really. I mean, now that we're seeing things like Black Panther coming out, now that we're seeing things like, Crazy Rich Asians, movies like that are truly portraying diverse cultures that are allowing, all Asian casts or all African American casts.
I like how you use crazy.
And I love it. Like I have no problem with those. As a matter of fact, I like them. Right. And I don't care that there's like all black superheroes. By the way, a lot of people said Black Panther was the first. Like, I mean, have you guys seen Blade? A lot of people haven't, especially my age. But Blade was awesome. That was probably the first black superhero. But like I don't have a problem with all of that. Like, I don't know, and it's like, you know, why are we even talking about this? But this is like, I always tumble things like this over in my mind. Like, why does that annoy me? How can I articulate this? So, I mean, you guys heard my arguments. You know, people who don't like me are going to say I'm a racist anyway. So, I guess I'm not winning any favors. But there it is. So that's my flaming hot take for tonight. I'll let you guys move on.